In our headlines on this Tuesday, February 11th, here in South Korea, President Yoon Suk-yeol attends the 7th formal hearing of his impeachment trial at the Constitutional Court today, with the final and 8th hearing slated for this coming Thursday. Meanwhile, the Korea Development Institute lowers its growth projection for the local economy this year to 1.6% amid the ongoing political uncertainty and the broader ramifications of Trump tariffs. And over in the US, starting next month, all steel and aluminium imports into the US market will face a 25% tariff with no exemption, according to US President Donald Trump, who signed the order on Monday. The Constitutional Court opened what looks to be its final week of formal hearings today, with 4 witnesses taking the stand in the later session. For details on this, I have our correspondent Oh Soo-young standing by live at the court. Soo-young, welcome back. So the hearing today began with former Interior Minister Lee Sang-min. What were his statements today?
Good afternoon, Sunny. Yes, former Interior Minister Lee Sang-min, he appeared to back the President's claims that his martial law is legal against assertions that the President had bypassed cabinet procedures required before declaring the decree. Now, previously, Acting President and Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok had claimed that a cabinet meeting had not been held beforehand, and that he hadn't seen Defence Minister Kim Yong-yeon recommend the decree to the Prime Minister as per the constitutional requirement for martial law. He said while it wasn't scheduled as a cabinet meeting, around 7 members initially gathered and waited for the 11-member quorum to be filled. He said those present would have considered themselves to be in a cabinet meeting.
When martial law was declared, for the first time in 45 years, there were concerns about whether the public would accept it, its diplomatic and economic impact, and the political backlash from the opposition.
Also, in direct contradiction with prosecutors' records, Lee denied he'd asked the National Fire Agency to cut water and power to news organisations and said he did not receive such orders from Yoon. While the former minister said he tried to dissuade the President from declaring martial law, he understood where the decision came from. Yoon himself took to reiterate his claim that the opposition Democratic Party had sabotaged the administration by constantly impeaching officials and, crucially, cutting the government budget.
도대체 제가 대통령으로서 야당이 아무리 저를 공격하더라도 왜 대화와 타협을 안 하겠습니다. 야당을 설득해서 뭐를 해보려고 한 건데 이 문명 국가에서 도대체 현대사에서 볼 수 없는 이런 줄타내기라고 하는 것은 이거는 대단히 악의적인 거고 이거는 대화와 타협을 하겠다는 것이 아니라 그냥 이 정권을 파괴시키는 것이 우리의 목표라고 하는 것을 명확히 보여주는 겁니다. 아까도 뭐 0.몇 %의
National Security Advisor Shin Won-sik also indicated that external hybrid security threats were mounting, calling for national unity, but the opposition-led forces were thwarting an effective government response. He said he and other senior secretaries had voiced their concerns over declaring martial law, but added Yoon agreed right away to lift martial law once Parliament passed a motion to revoke it. Now former 3rd Deputy Director of the National Intelligence Service, Baek Jong-wook, is testifying. The questions for him and Secretary General of the National Election Commission, Kim Yong-bin, are expected to focus on election fraud allegations raised by Yoon as a pretext for declaring his martial law.
Meanwhile, Soo-young, I hear the Constitutional Court has yet to decide on additional hearings beyond what has been planned as the final and 8th hearing this coming Thursday.
That's right, Sonny. In order to formally conclude the hearings, the bench would have to listen to the closing arguments by both legal teams as well as President Yoon's final statement. Now, this would take around 2 to 3 hours, I would say, and given that 4 witness statements that are already planned for Thursday, it's highly unlikely that the justices will conclude the hearings then. Experts say more witnesses are likely to be summoned, as some of the main testimonies we've heard so far have caused more confusion due to the discrepancies we've seen with previous statements made in prosecutorial records, for instance, as well as the conflicting narratives between the witnesses. The president's side again on Tuesday contested the court's decision to accept investigation records as evidence.
여러 기관들이 그냥 달려들어서 중구난방으로 조사를 하고 조서들끼리도 서로 막 상충되는 것들이 많고 이렇게 딱 어느 한 기관이 체계적으로 수사를 했으면은 모르겠는데 이게 서로도 맞지 않고 하기 때문에 만연히 그냥 증거로 채택해서 사실 인정에 반영한다는 거는 이 근본 구조.
While the court has emphasised its commitment to a speedy trial, there's been concern that the back-to-back witness questioning twice a week as well doesn't allow for much doesn't really allow time for thorough review of the testimonies or evidence. Still, the opposition, the National Assembly's impeachment panel has called for a quick end to the trial, saying that the evidence is already out there.
Our patience is wearing thin. How much longer must we put up with the baseless conspiracy theories about election fraud? There's already been enough consideration given to the respondent through this week's witness examination. We hope for a swift conclusion to the proceedings.
All right, Seong, thank you for the latest on the president's impeachment trial. Right. Meanwhile, the South Korean economy is forecast to grow 1.6% this year. Now, this is according to a state-run think tank following a downward revision to reflect the prolonged political paralysis here and the broader market ramifications of Trump tariffs. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun reports.
South Korea's economic growth projection for the year has been slashed on the back of rising uncertainties with U.S. trade tariffs and continued political instability in the country. In its outlook published on Tuesday, the state-run Korea Development Institute forecast the economy to grow 0.9% in the first half of 2025 and 2.2% in the second half, bringing the annual growth rate to 1.6%. That's down by 0.4 percentage points from its previous forecast of 2% released in November. This is lower than forecasts from major institutions such as the OECD at 2.1%, but similar to the Bank of Korea's projection of 1.6 to 1.7%. The agency noted that the prolonged slump in domestic demand exacerbated by political turmoil in the country, combined with a slowdown in exports, is weighing down on economic growth. The construction sector remains in recession while the service sector struggles to recover. Despite strong semiconductor demand, the goods exports were revised down from 1.9% to 1.5%, reflecting deteriorating trade conditions. Weak domestic demand is, however, likely to limit inflationary pressure, keeping the KDI's consumer price inflation forecast at 1.6%. It is also expected to affect the labor market as sluggish domestic demand limits job growth. These projections, however, come with the KDI assuming that U.S. trade restrictions under the Trump administration would be implemented gradually. The faster-than-expected policy moves have significantly increased uncertainty.
If trade tensions under Trump escalate further or political instability drags on longer than expected, growth could fall below the 1.6% we've projected.
That being said, the agency pointed out that tariffs on steel and aluminium are unlikely to have a great impact on the country's GDP growth.
Steel and aluminium make up about 0.8% of our total exports to the US, so in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge portion of our overall portions. If the tariffs do go into effect, these industries would take a significant hit, but in terms of GDP, we don't expect the impact to be that substantial.
With weak consumption, slowing exports and persistent uncertainty both at home and abroad, the KDI's latest outlook signals that the country's economic recovery remains vulnerable. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
And also on the economy, ruling People Power Party floor leader Kwon Song-dong called for prompt approval of a supplementary budget and a special act to better support the chip market. Addressing the National Assembly today, Kwon highlighted the importance of a parliamentary approval within this month to jumpstart economic recovery as Korea faces mounting internal and external concerns. He also elaborated on the need to amend the constitution to decentralize presidential authority, to ease political strife among rival parties. And as promised, U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday put into action his intentions to impose a 25% blanket tariff on all steel and aluminium imports into the U.S. market. Starting next month, our Park Gonu reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order at the White House on Monday to impose new 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, set to be effective from March 12th.
It's 25% without exceptions or exemptions. If it's made in the United States, there is no tariff. All you have to do is make it in the United States.
The White House also noted countries including South Korea that were exempt from tariffs during Trump's first administration will now be subject to them. South Korea was the fourth largest steel and aluminum exporter to the U.S. last year. Trump also warned on Monday of the possibility of imposing tariffs on items including automobiles and chips, exports that are critical to South Korea's economy. On top of South Korea, Asian countries including China, which are also among the largest trading partners, according to 2024 data from the U.S. Department of Commerce, are set to be affected. However, in other parts of the world, Trump is considering exemptions for Australia given that the U.S. has a trade surplus with the country due to its significant purchases of U.S. aircraft. Nonetheless, Trump's move is raising fears over the impact of an escalating trade war. Canada, the country that exports the most steel and aluminum to the U.S., and another major trading partner, Mexico, are expected to be among the worst hit. Trump's latest announcement follows plans revealed by the U.S. president the day before to set reciprocal tariffs on countries that tax goods imported from the U.S. Trump said those measures will be implemented in the next few days, adding that he is unconcerned about potential retaliation. That has prompted a strong warning from the European Union.
We stand against unjustified barriers to free and fair trade. We will always take the necessary steps to protect our economic interests as well as European businesses, workers and consumers from unjustified tariff measures.
While describing the tariffs as unlawful and economically counterproductive, Olaf Jill, the European Commission spokesman, also said the EU remains committed to constructive talks with the U.S. to find mutually beneficial solutions. Park Gonu, Arirang News.
Refrigerators by Samsung Electronics have been voted as the most trusted by consumers in the UK. This is according to a survey conducted by Newsweek, an American magazine that recently shared its list of most trusted brands for the year in the UK. Regarding the reasons cited for their vote of confidence in Samsung's fridges, consumers in the UK highlighted the Korean company's ethical values, its reasonable price and customer service. Young entrepreneurs from overseas are opting to start their business ventures here in South Korea. Our An Sung-jin tells us why.
8 years ago, former Samsung employee Pankaj Agarwal started his own business here in South Korea. Now that business has dozens of employees across 2 countries.
My journey started with Samsung in Korea, and in Samsung there's a program called C-Lab that gave me a chance to spin off my company, and very naturally, from an employee at Samsung, we became an independent company.
He chose Seoul as the base for his edutech startup.
Then what are some of the opportunities that a lot of foreign entrepreneurs see in Korea, whether it be perks, or what are some of the characteristics or the reasons as to why foreign entrepreneurs would find Korea as an attractive destination?
I think Korea is very unique in that there are a lot of support programs. The government makes sure that the startups have a lot of opportunities because, startups are always afraid. For example, for us, our first office was sponsored by Korean government.
Pankaj says basing his business in Korea has helped in other ways too.
And what I've really benefited most from Korea, being in Korea, is the Korea brand. There is K-pop, there is K-drama, and now I say, why not K-education? And hence, I want to create something. In fact, in this case, I want to create a successful venture that can help showcase Korea's image in the world, that a foreigner entrepreneur can really build a billion-dollar business from Korea.
U.S. consultancy startup Genome has ranked Seoul's startup ecosystem 9th out of 300 cities around the world. And to help startups get off the ground, the Ministry of SMEs provides special programs to help foreign entrepreneurs settle and grow their businesses, including assistance with visa process, business development funds, and other support.
So far, we've mostly focused on helping Korean startups expand. But in order to foster a startup ecosystem in Korea, we figured it's also important to host foreign entrepreneurs and startups and garner talents from abroad to Korea.
More global entrepreneurs are choosing Korea as a place to start their business. And this Global Startup Center also facilitates market entry for these companies through patent and administrative support or corporate partnership matching.
Korea was the one offering the biggest ecosystem, the most developed infrastructures, and the best opportunities as well. I would say that the visa process was actually very smooth.
Always able to ask other entrepreneurs how they are managing their startup entrepreneurial life in Korea, and yes, so we can accelerate this business here much faster than.
The beginning of a startup involves struggles such as finding resources and investment. That's why efforts from the government and other stakeholders could be the catalyst for attracting global entrepreneurs and sustaining a healthy startup ecosystem for Korea. An Song-jin, Arirang News.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has reportedly accepted a Russian invitation to its Victory Day celebrations that are poised to take place in May. Now, North Korea's Kim Jong-un is also expected to attend this event. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae-eun-ji has more.
Leaders of Russia and China vowed to further develop their partnership throughout this year in a video call last month, with Putin addressing Xi as his dear friend.
It is safe to say that foreign policy ties and joint work between Russia and China objectively play an important and stabilizing role in international affairs.
In the new year, I'm willing to work with you to continue guiding China-Russia relations to a new height in 2025, to respond to external uncertainties with the stability and resilience of China-Russia ties.
Citing Russian ambassador to China, Igor Morgulov, Russia's TASS news agency reported Monday local time that Chinese President Xi Jinping has accepted Russia's invitation to attend a Victory Day ceremony, marking the 80th anniversary of the Soviet contribution to victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. The ambassador also reportedly said that Xi, in return, has invited Putin to China for its own commemoration of the end of World War II, scheduled for September. Although China has yet to officially confirm Xi's visit to Russia, if he does decide to attend, it will be the first time in 10 years for a Chinese leader to take part in the event. The Kremlin told TASS that preparations are already underway for Xi's visit to Moscow and Putin's trip to Beijing. Earlier in December, the Kremlin said it had invited leaders of many countries to attend the 80th anniversary of the end of the war, and that includes North Korea. This means that there is a possibility that the leaders of Beijing, Moscow, and Pyongyang may hold talks to seek ways to push back against U.S. President Donald Trump. So eyes are now on whether the three countries will further strengthen their relations and work together to pressure the United States. Bae-eun-ji, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in the Middle East, the fate of the ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas has been rendered uncertain, with the latter speaking of plans to postpone the release of Israeli hostages who had been expected to return home this coming Saturday. Our Lee Seung-jae has details.
Palestinian militant group Hamas had planned to release Israeli hostages this coming Saturday in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. However, that swap may now be in doubt, as the militant group announced on Monday that it would delay those plans, accusing Israel of breaching the Gaza ceasefire agreement. According to Hamas armed wing spokesperson Abu Abida, the release of the Israeli hostages will be postponed until further notice, pending Israel's compliance and retroactive compensation for the past weeks. He added that Hamas will reaffirm its commitment to the ceasefire agreement as long as Israel adheres to it. The spokesperson further explained that for the past 3 weeks, the Israelis did not abide by the terms of the agreement, having delayed the return of residents of northern Gaza, targeting Palestinians with shelling and gunfire, and stopping aid from entering the enclave. Israel has refuted the claims made by Hamas and instead blamed the militant group for violating the ceasefire agreement. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz also announced on Monday that he had instructed his military to prepare at the highest level of alert for any possible scenario in Gaza. In response, the Israel Defense Forces said it was raising its level of readiness in southern Israel and postponing leave for combat soldiers, raising concerns over further escalation of tension in the region. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also moved up a political security cabinet meeting originally scheduled for Tuesday evening after the Hamas announcement. An Israeli official said the Israeli leader is consulting with his security leadership team to discuss response measures. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
On the entertainment front, the global hit APT by Blackpink's Rosé and Bruno Mars has made new history on the Billboard Global excluding US chart. On Monday, Billboard announced the song had topped this chart for 15 weeks, breaking the previous record of 14 weeks set by Mariah Carey with her song All I Want for Christmas Is You. Separately, APT continues to maintain its 6th place standing on the Billboard Hot 100. Now, Rosé also made history on this chart, reaching number 3 to become the highest-ranking K-pop female artist in Hot 100 history. The cultural core of Korean Buddhism has announced plans to expand temple stays as it seeks to nurture happiness through healing. In commemoration of the 2025 APEC summit to be held in Gyeongju in November, a special temple stay program will be set up to better accommodate foreign visitors. Efforts will also be made to raise awareness of temple cuisine through collaborations with renowned culinary institutions like Le Cordon Bleu. Tailored programs for the young and newlyweds will also be offered. Temple stays are unique cultural programs here in South Korea that allow visitors the chance to experience the daily life of Buddhist monks.
During the day today, the temperatures recovered back to normal levels, rising to 6 degrees Celsius in Seoul. All of the cold wave warnings have been lifted as well. However, as the cold recedes, it's being replaced by uninvited dust. The Seoul metropolitan area, Gangwon-do province, and the Chungcheong-do provinces will see bad levels of ultrafine dust on Wednesday. Rain will begin tonight on the west coast of Jeollanam-do province and Jeju Island. Rain and snow are forecast all over the country tomorrow. Especially it will snow strongly from dawn into tomorrow morning. Please be careful on the slippery roads on the way to work. Seoul will start off at 0 degrees tomorrow morning and Daejeon and Daegu at -1 degree. Daytime temperatures will move up to 4 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon. In central parts of the country, you'll be able to see the full moon of Jeongwol-daeborim through the clouds. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the top stories at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. Do stay with us and thank you for now.